Yo, so guys, welcome back to another video. This is a reaction to countries that dislike each other. I mean, yeah, the title is pretty obvious, but if I was to think of like countries that don't like each other, it'd be like, I guess half the world and the UK. Yeah, would you say the US and like China? I guess you would. I don't know if it's a hate. Is it a hate? I guess it is. I don't really know. US and Russia. I mean, a lot of countries in Russia, to be honest. Yeah, just I don't know what else to be honest, but we're gonna obviously see in this video. And I guess it's going to sort of give a backstory as to why, I assume. But yeah, let's just jump into this. Hopefully you're going to enjoy. Links are in the description to my Patreon for those who want to see extra reactions. I'm going to post a Patreon video today, so it'll be an extra reaction for you to see. Same for my Instagram, my Twitter for those who want to follow me. But let's just get into this and see what countries don't like each other.
A few times now I've done a couple videos about country rivalries, but in all of these I limited the listing of rivalries to those within the same continent. In this video I want to do something slightly different and open this up to the entire world, talking about countries that dislike each other on more of an international level, although to be fair many of these are in fact neighboring or at least in the same continent, but at least we can include various continents' rivalries in the same video. We're going to take a look at 8 different pairs of countries that dislike each other, understanding why this rivalry exists, how far it goes, and what it would perhaps take for it to be resolved. A quick disclaimer, the usage of the phrase countries that dislike each other doesn't necessarily mean a deep hatred between nations or any real conflict in some cases, just specific rivalries that exist between two nations or its people for various reasons. There's also a large amount of pairs of countries we could use for this. I randomly chose 8 I found interesting for this video. Let me know
Actually, I was going to pause it, but I want to actually
if
save
there
it for
are
the video.
any others you would like me to cover. Starting with the ones on the thumbnail, India and Pakistan. Their rivalry can be...
I've heard of this sort of rivalry or whatever it is a lot before, but then I've seen like people say it's the government, like people from these countries, and actually like people from the countries get on well. It's the government that sort of caused the division. I might be wrong, but that's what I've sort of heard from people.
Be summarized to one main issue: Kashmir. Their conflict started after the partition of India in 1947. After the end of World War II, European powers began decolonizing many of their overseas territories, and such was the case for the British Raj, which was made up of what is today Pakistan, India, Bangladesh, and a couple other territories. Upon independence, both India and Pakistan claimed the entirety of the former princely states of Jammu and Kashmir. This came at a time when the princely states of the former British Raj were given instruments to be included in these new nations. The dispute over the region escalated into 3 wars between India and Pakistan over time, and several other armed skirmishes. A de facto line of control has been established, but both countries claimed the entirety of the region. Then China also jumped in, claiming a part of the territory, so there are more players at stake other than just the 2 countries, which might make it more difficult to settle. There's
3
also
powerful
the
countries
issue
as well,
of one country being mainly Muslim and the other being mainly Hindu. To the northwest, we have another one, Armenia and Azerbaijan. These 2 countries dislike each other mainly due to one territorial dispute as well, over the territory of Nagorno-Karabakh, inhabited by ethnic Armenians but ruled by Azerbaijan. Oddly enough, Azerbaijan has its own disconnected exclave within Armenia too, although they rule it and not Armenia. One wonders if this issue couldn't be fixed by simply exchanging the territories and migrating the people from one to the other, but then again, I'm ignorant on this.
I guess it's a kind of a good point, but it's a lot harder said than done. There's so many people in both of these areas, it's not really possible. Plus, people don't want to leave where they grew up, right? They want to stay where they're from.
Subject. The conflict has its origins in the early 20th century, but the present conflict began in 1988 when the Karabakh Armenians demanded transferring Karabakh from Soviet Azerbaijan to Soviet Armenia when both were a part of the USSR. The reason for the transfer request seems to have been precisely the existence of a large Armenian community within the territory. The conflict escalated into a full-scale war in the early 1990s, which later transformed into a low-intensity conflict. In April of 2016 and then in 2020, actual conflict and war took place. Right now, it seems to have de-escalated into mostly a border conflict. These first 2 were within the same continent, but the next one is truly an intercontinental one. Before we go on with the video, I want to thank the sponsor of this video and great friend.
Getting his money, you know how it is. You'll love to see it. And this video was just made like 2 days ago as well, so sponsorship's still probably in. So you know how it is. 1 free week, 125% discount.
to try it out, and then
in the description to
25%
his
off
video.
if you want to continue on with your membership. The United Kingdom and Argentina. The issue between
Oh, we
UK
know about
and
that.
Argentina is odd. Why would two countries so far away from each other with very little common history have any problem with each other? It all has to do with a set of islands off the Argentine coast. The Falkland Malvina Islands. I guess whichever name you use depends on which side you support. It began in 1982, when the British islands were occupied by Argentina. The UK responded and defeated the Argentines in a war that lasted for 74 days. The reason for Argentina's invasion was that, and they still maintain this claim as far as I could find out, the islands are Argentine territory, and the Argentine government thus characterized its military action as the reclamation of its own land and not an invasion, which is obviously how the British saw it. But the island was inhabited by descendants of British settlers since the 19th century and strongly favors British sovereignty per a 1986 referendum where UK rule won with 96%. So why do the Argentinians claim it? Argentina says it has a right to the islands because they would have inherited them from the Spanish crown in the early 1800s when the South Americans achieved their independence. They claim the British simply occupied them ever since, ignoring the legal ownership. Neither state officially declared war at the time, although both governments declared the islands a war zone. Diplomatic relations between the UK and Argentina were restored in 1989 following a meeting in Madrid. But no change in either country's position was made. In 1994, Argentina adopted a new constitution which declared the Falkland Islands as a part of one of its provinces by law. However, they continue to be ruled by the British today. One major country rivalry is Serbia and Kosovo, whose issues go back to the problem between Serbia
Albania. Because I know there's a lot of history behind Serbia and Albania, and Kosovo is quite a new country. I think it was it was part of Serbia, but then broke off. I don't know, but I think so. Because Serbia, they're all new countries, right, or relatively new countries. But like Serbia and Albania have been around for a bit longer than Kosovo, and then I think Kosovo broke off from Serbia, I guess.
And Albania. Kosovo was, until fairly recently, a part of Serbia, only achieving independence in 2006 and mainly against Serbian will. 90% of Kosovo's population is Albanian, which caused Albania to intervene in the conflict that happened at Kosovo's side against Serbia. Because of this and many other historic reasons, the relationship between Serbia and these two others isn't the best. The Serbian problem towards Kosovo seems to be simply the fact that they lost that territory, which they believe is rightfully theirs, but it's all part of a greater issue between them and Albania that goes back hundreds of years, with focus on the Balkan Wars, Serbian rule over Albanian populated areas, and even the rule of the Ottoman Empire over both their territories. And another pair of countries that partially dislike each other are Vietnam and Cambodia. And like always, it has to do with history. Any two countries that exist next to each other, save specific exceptions, will likely have a history of conflict between them. That's also the case with these two. We could start even earlier on, but one specific conflict that started forging not so good relations between the two were the Vietnamese invasions of Cambodia in 1811. Further ahead, there was the Vietnam War, in which South Vietnam was supported by the United States and, you guessed it, Cambodia too. North Vietnam won, and the regime today is a successor of that belligerent, so it makes sense that they didn't love someone who recently tried to help defeat them. The Vietnam War ended in 1975, and in 1979 Cambodia and Vietnam themselves went to war, where I believe Vietnam helped Cambodian revolutionaries take control of the country and create the People's Republic of Kampuchea, which lasted for 10 years. Today, those military issues seem thankfully resolved, but some issues might remain on either side. Moving to Africa, Eritrea and Ethiopia also have some issues with each other, mostly regarding their borders. On this map, we can see the disputed areas highlighted in green and red. From 1961 until 1991, Eritrea had fought a war of independence against Ethiopia. In the meantime, Ethiopia faced an internal conflict in which one side allied itself with the Eritreans. After the war, both winning sides couldn't agree on what the border of their states should be. Because of this, a second war began in 1998 until 2000, being tragically devastating. Peace was finally reached in 2018, but issues over the occupation of some territories remain, and relations between the two countries are not yet ideal. All the way in South America, a rivalry exists between Chile and Peru. Their dispute goes back to the late 19th century, and it has to do with...
So interesting how you could be in Chile, but you could be all the way down here. And it's just you're so far away from any other part of South America. Also, these just seem like very thin countries. Like I guess Peru's not that thin, but just coastal thin
The
countries.
third country, Bolivia. Bolivia wasn't always a landlocked country, and throughout time, it eventually lost parts of its land to its neighbors. At one point,
Oh,
they
damn.
shared a part of the Pacific coast with Chile. Both of them wanted exclusive ownership, and so they went to war for it, with Peru joining on Bolivia's side. This was in 1879. However, even against two nations, Chile was victorious, annexing the full
Damn.
coastline and even parts of Peru itself. Over 100 years later, Chile still owns much of that territory, and Peruvian people seem to still not like that. Legal battles between the two nations continue, especially over maritime disputes. In late
I mean, if you started the war and you had two people on your side, two countries on your side, and you still lost, I don't think there's much you can be mad about. I'll be
2009,
honest.
Chile did a military exercise which concerned the Peruvian government due to the scenario they used of a northern country attacking a southern one. Both Peru and Bolivia are the northern neighbors of Chile, but still, despite these troubles, they live in peace, and all we can do is hope that it will remain the case. Finally,
Let's hope.
going back to Europe, Hungary.
So I saw this at the start, and I know a bit about this because my girlfriend's from a part of Romania where I think it was taken off Hungary, Transylvania, that area. I'm pretty sure.
And Romania. Hungary and Romania have a pretty peaceful coexistence as bordering
Yeah, there we
countries
go.
in Europe.
Oh, no, she's not from Transylvania. She's from somewhere like here. But I know about
They're
Transylvania.
also both part of the European Union, so it would be impossible for them to be at war or any type of serious conflict, but historically they have somewhat of a large rivalry, and a conflict that shows itself through small details and events throughout time. It's all about Transylvania and the loss of this territory by Hungary to Romania, which today controls it. Many Hungarians, including some governments, still see it as a territory which should rightfully be theirs, because it was until 1920, with many Hungarians at the time moving or already living in the region. Today, apparently 1 million ethnic Hungarians still live in this region, despite now being Romanian on their passports. Most of them are even concentrated within a part of Romania, Szekely. The claim of Hungary over these territories is far from gone. In fact, the Hungarian government recently passed a law giving citizenship to all ethnic Hungarians in Europe, which means that the Szekely people are now Hungarian citizens as well.
damn.
Every now and then there are provocations on each side, like Romania celebrating the annexation or Hungary reaffirming their claim that the territory should still be theirs. So, those are a few countries worldwide
rivalries
that
we just
dislike
saw.
each other, some caused by more recent conflicts, other by ancient issues, and some by continuous ones that are
It's just quite interesting to learn these things, you know. Just learn about the world. As a Romanian, I actually never met a Hungarian person in Romania because I used to live so far away from the region of Transylvania. My hometown is by the Black Sea, but these days I live and work in Germany and have met many Hungarian people, very friendly people. We never had an issue. I consider the Hungarians in Romania as citizens just normal people. Yeah, it's good to see. Azerbaijan doesn't own an exclave within Armenia. They own an exclave which is located to the west of Armenia. Alright, someone's been specific there. But yeah, interesting to learn. Hopefully you enjoyed this as much as you can. And if you want more of these types of reactions, let me know in the comments. And I mean, yeah, until next time, like, subscribe. Peace.